Setting up our new scopes on episode 388 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. My apologies, my voice is nearly all better, Shane, but still have a bit of a dry cough, and sounds like you've been a little bit under the weather as well.
I have been, yeah. You know, you know how we kind of joke in the hobby that when you get new astronomy gear, um, it often comes with clouds or poor weather or whatever.
Mm.
Well, the day I got my new board was the day I started to feel something coming on, and it was a flu. And also, that was the last clear, warm day that I think we'll
Yeah,
probably have until May now.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
well, it is what it is.
No joke. That happened last year. I think we had that cold weather move in around this time last year, and I remember I was going out with my astronomy class it was like the 13th of April, and it wasn't even supposed to get that cold. Like, it was still like not getting above zero. And we went out, set up the scope, looked at Mercury, and then I got in my car, drove home. It was minus 17 or 18. And then that night it went to minus 26. So it was still going into the cold minus 20s in mid-May or mid-April last year. And it wasn't until the 1st of May that it did warm up, like you reference. It's no joke here.
hmm Well, and when my wife and I booked our upcoming trip to Cuba, we were kind of questioning, one of the values of a warm weather trip when you live where we live is it gets you out of the cold and it's a nice break. But because we've been having such a mild winter, we were
Mm,
wondering if it was worth it all.
yeah.
Well, in 6 days, I think our daytime high is forecasted to be minus 29
Yep.
Celsius, I
That's what
believe.
I've seen too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the cold is nearly here.
The cold is nearly here. Um, Couple things. Howard Banich had a great article on observing and
Mm,
sketching M78, SA78, which is a small nebulae just above and to the left of Orion's belt. In the January issue of Sky and Telescope, I had taken the magazine with me when I went away. I hadn't finished reading the December issue. I had gone away in early part of December. I read the December issue going down. My plan was to read the January issue on the way back. And then I was so sick on the plane that I just couldn't read anything. I just sort of sat there and, choked down Fisherman's Friends and drank water. And that was all I could do. But this weekend, I did get around to reading that article. And if people haven't already, they should pick up a copy of the January issue of Sky and Telescope and read Howard's article. It is absolutely amazing. He shows a sketch of it, I think, through his 28-inch reflector. So really, really cool stuff.
yeah, yeah. Not only is he a great observer and sketcher, but a great writer too. So it's like the perfect combination.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really neat. We were talking about having more folks on from Sky and Telescope, maybe some other places as well. I'm going to start reaching out to them in the new year, kind of once I'm back to 100%. But Shane, you referenced going away,
Mhm.
and we were talking a little bit about that before we hit record, and maybe doing a couple extra episodes to take us over the line. But you had a couple ideas for maybe how listeners could help us with those episodes. So do you care to share with the class?
Oh, I do care. Yes. So this time of the year, not everybody, but it's not uncommon for folks to get some new gear. Over the holiday season, sometimes family or even you treat yourself to something new.
Treat yourself.
Um, yeah. So we would love to hear about it. If you got anything new for your astronomy hobby, let us know. Tell us what you got, and if you've had an opportunity to use it and what you think of it. Maybe it's an eyepiece or a filter, mount, tripod, telescope, on and on and on. Anything goes. Yeah, we'd love to hear about it. It's fun to share what people are, I guess purchasing and adding to their collections because sometimes it gives others new insights. But it's also very interesting just to hear people's opinions of this stuff because it is a very subjective hobby, and I always enjoy hearing what other people think of various eyepieces and other things. So please send it in to actualastronomy@gmail.com. And what we'll end up doing is taking some of these emails and just talking about them and turning it into a future episode or two.
Sounds good. And then I think as well, maybe if you're thinking about, and this is kind of where I'm going with this episode, as you know, Shane, if you've had a chance to read the notes, is I have to get some things. So it's kind of bouncing a few things off you. So also, listeners, if you're thinking about getting some stuff, or you're wondering about anything, you can send in those questions as well, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, yeah, great point.
Did you get any observing in this past week, Shane? It sounds like that's going to be a no, but I
Well,
thought I'd ask it anyway.
yeah, it's sort of a fake yes. Being sick, but also getting the Borg 90 FL in my possession, I was really curious if it would run on my travel mount and tripod. So I have a Gitzo, I think it's the Traveler series tripod that came with a Gitzo ball head mount that I just sort of, rotate on its side to turn it into like an alt as mount essentially.
Hmm.
And it carries my 71 Borg FL really, really well. No vibration. I shouldn't say that. Exceptionally little vibration, and it dampens quickly. And it's just a wonderful setup. Super lightweight, easily portable. But the Borg 91 is considerably heavier than the 71. And with 2-inch accessories and everything like that, it was just too much. Like I would tap it and it would just like the vibrations would last probably 3 to 4 seconds before fully dampening.
Hmm.
And as such, I switched the mount. I have an old Stellar View. I think it's the M1 mount. So I think, everybody probably is somewhat familiar with the what is it? The M2C is the
Hmm.
current Stellar View, alt as mount. I have it. It's a wonderful mount. But many years ago, they made one that looks exactly like that form factor, just much smaller, much more portable, and they called it the M1. And so I put that on that Gitzo tripod, and I'm just curious. Maybe I'll try it tonight, just tap it a little bit, or even this afternoon. I don't really need to wait for nighttime. But I'd like to see how that handles the 90. If it if if it's better, if it's less vibration or the dampening is much faster, maybe I'll start using that with the 90. The other alternative is for travel purposes, at least, maybe I ditch the 2-inch accessories. Because as you and I were texting a bit this past week, and I told you that the Borg 90 with rings, dovetail, um, I guess that's probably about it. Like basically the OTA without any diagonal or eyepiece is 2.5 kilograms, which is pretty good weight or lightweightness for that aperture. Um, but my diagonal with the 30 millimeter UFF is about a kilogram. So,
Hmm.
it really adds a lot of weight relative to the whole setup. So anyway, the alternative could be that I just go 1.25 inches and save a bunch of weight that way. So I still have a few things to try.
Hmm.
The other thing that I can do with the Borg, but I need an adapter. The way it's configured right now is it has a draw tube in it for like chorus focus. And I don't really need that because I have the rack and pinion focuser. And that
Right.
that draw tube adds quite a bit of weight actually.
Huh.
Because you have two tubes there that are nested in each other.
Right.
Um, so when I get this adapter, it will allow me then to use just like a standard, I guess, sort of Borg tube section, which would save me close to 300 grams, I think, or 250 to 300 grams,
Hmm.
which, maybe doesn't sound like a lot in everyday, life. But when you're talking about a 2.5 kilogram object, that's pretty substantial actually to take that kind of weight out of it. So
Hmm.
I have options. It'll be kind of fun to play around with. So I guess to answer the question, did I do observing? Not really, but sort of.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. What's the adapter that you were talking about getting one
Mm.
from Flow or from Japan?
Yeah, so the issue is the Borg focuser, the 2-inch focuser, the threads that are on that focuser do not natively attach to the 80 millimeter uh, tubes that are used with the 90 FL.
Oh.
Now, the draw tube that's in there, so the focuser threads, the diameter is a little smaller than the actual 80 millimeter threads on the OTA tube. The draw tube that's there has a narrower diameter, and it allows for that focuser to just directly thread in. So that's why I have to keep the draw tube in place right now. But if I get this adapter, it'll step down the threads from the OTA to the size of the focuser, and then I'm good to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm interested in this because I sort of have a similar thing. I never thought about working through this before. That's the one of the good parts about the best part about the Borgs is there's sort of infinite configurability, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bad part is the infinite configurability.
Yes, 100%.
So, because I have the Borg 125 SD, the 5-inch,
Uh-huh.
and I also have one of these sort of slinky draw tubes, but I could probably figure out one or two. There's two positions that I need. One is when I'm using my multiple filter selector, because that increases the need for like less focal length, like inside the telescope. And then when I'm just using a regular diagonal, I need to come out another 3 inches. But I hadn't really thought too much about this before, but it would be nice, especially in that longer configuration, to be able to just have a draw tube or two that I can swap in and out, because there's only two positions that I use with it. And it is a little bit of a pain. The thing that I do like about the draw tube, though, is that I can rotate the focuser very, very easily without rotating the diagonal in the focuser, which often doesn't matter, but when you have the filter selector in, it does matter. So that has come in quite handy.
Yeah, that is definitely a nice feature of those draw tubes. The 2-inch Borg focuser is rotatable natively, which is kind of a nice feature. The other thing too, like, so our little mini Borgs, the 50 mils, they have a draw tube and it works fairly well. But the 90 millimeter draw tube, or the one that came with that one, is far better engineered. Like the movement on it is, I guess, more assured is maybe a better way to state it. Like there's no flopsiness to it. It takes a little more pressure to move it, but like it moves very accurately. So like you can kind of get as much out of it as you need or as little. And it seems like a better design that it can, handle the weight a bit better, because with the 50, I sort of noticed some of that slop. Like there's a little bit of play there, and I would always question if I'm fully aligned all the way through that light path. But anyway, I'm pretty pleased with what they did with that 90 FL.
I'm really interested to see this focuser that you have from Borg, the 2-inch. I was aware they did a 1.25, but for some reason, I guess I didn't know they did a 2-inch, or maybe when I saw them, I just, this problem with the internet, right? You look at things, sometimes you look at it really quick and you can't tell, like, unless you sort of read the fine print sometimes, if you're looking at a 1.25-inch accessory or a 2-inch accessory.
Yeah, very, very good point. And I have the 1.25 focusers on a couple of my other, like on the 71 FL and the 50 FL. And I was quite pleased with the quality of those ones. So, when this 90 FL came up, I quickly looked for the 2-inch version, because I'm pretty pleased with the build quality of them. They're 2-speed focusers. They're pretty solid. I'm not sure what kind of weight they can handle. Like I don't know if I could easily put on the bino viewer and have it hold focus if I was, looking close to zenith, but that's kind of an extreme use case anyway. But yeah, overall pretty pleased with that focuser.
Cool.
Were you able to get any observing in?
I went out to I wasn't going observing, I should say this, but I went out to my observatory one day just to do something, and I forgot my keys at home.
Oh, gee.
So there's a lesson learned, and called up my my builder in a bit of a Hail Mary, and I said, I know you gave me the keys, but I'm just wondering if you happen to grab them off the hook for one reason. He's like, no, I gave you the keys. I'm like, yeah, Yeah, I left them at home. Sprig. So I couldn't do what I gone out there to do in the observatory. I had a whole pile of stuff to do. That was just one of 20 things I had to do. But anyway, so kind of learned my lesson there, to maybe put one on my keychain, and I should just give him one. That's, you know, that's what I've done with other things, because sometimes he'll just if something's happening out there, like if we do get super cold, like a
Hmm.
super cold snap, he'll just, like, if he's driving by, he'll just jump in the cabin just to make sure like everything's good. And I'm like, because he asked me once if he would mind if I did this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, like, this is amazing, like, please, like, if all it takes is handing you a key. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I don't mind doing that. He has a few cabins that he checks on for people that he does work for, and it's, couldn't be better. Like, I'm super thrilled with that kind of that kind of service, if you can get it,
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
so kind of, it sort of takes that worry off, because if it does get super cold, especially if we get this snow and then it's cold, it's tough to get out there. So I should leave him one for the observatory as well. There's nothing in the observatory, a couple pieces of wood, but anyhow, it's all good. This week though, what wasn't that great for observing, but I went out to the my local art supply store, which is an independent art store, and they back in, I guess it was late summer, they started carrying this new brand. Shoot, I should have it. I'll bring it up for the next show. They started carrying a new brand of black sketchbooks, hardcover, spiral bound, and I love them. Somebody else must like them too, because they brought in like a huge box of each different size, and they have like 4 or 5 different sizes. And when I went, they only had 3 of like the I guess it's like about 8 by 9. And so I bought one of those, because the sketchbook that I bought that had 100 sheets, and I mostly used both sides of the page, is almost used up, the one that I bought on the 1st of September.
Mhm.
So I was like, yes, this is good. I'm making good progress with my sketching. And I was thinking about sizing up my sketchbook, because with the observatory, I have it set up for sketching.
Mhm.
And so I always have a spot to kind of put my sketchbook. I'm not quite totally set up in there yet, but I'm like, yeah, I could get a bigger sketchbook now, because there's a spot for it, and a better it's made for sketching in there. So I think that I'm gonna size up my sketchbooks, and either put more sketches on a page, or just make bigger sketches, maybe, is kind of what I'm hoping to do.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
The other thing I did is, back last year, just over, well, about a year and a half ago now, I guess, I bought some Conte white chalk pencils, because this is kind of what was recommended as one of the better pencils you can use for doing the white on black sketching. But I just did that. I don't know whether it was the pencils I had, or from the cold, or changes in temperature and humidity, but I kind of just wrecked those pencils. I did use them quite a bit, and I like the Conte white chalk, but the pencils weren't working for me. I didn't sketch with them. I was just really just using the chalk. So what I did when I was buying the sketchbook is I just bought the chalk sticks themselves.
Mm.
And then mostly what I do is use a brush, or a series of brushes, to create the nebulae or galaxy or whatever it is, out of the chalk. And what I've been doing is sort of scratching the chalk on the top of the sketch pad, and then kind of bludgeoning the brush into that. And I don't think that's the best process, because it was kind of making a mess in the sketchbook. And then at the same time, I wasn't getting as much chalk. Like, I'd often have to be scratching the chalk and then going back to it, and not a great process. So my plan is, I was in there and I was looking around at different things, and I bought a tiny little metal tin. And my plan is to take the chalk sticks and to scratch off a pile of chalk, and then just take the little metal tin out with me. And then I kind of have a good supply of chalk to do what I need to do when I'm doing that type of sketching.
Hmm. Okay. Well,
We'll see what
curious to
works.
see how that works out.
Yeah. So then I was also looking. The one thing is I've been using the white ink in the field, and I like it. I just find and I've watched a lot of videos on people, testing out different white ink pens. I really wish you could get, like you can buy a nice sharp tip black pen or marker or whatever, right? You can get like a pretty fine one.
Hmm.
You can't really get that with a white ink. And so I was trying to figure out what to do because with my pens, it's a little bit random. Sometimes I get pretty good stars, and then sometimes the ink just doesn't flow. I thought maybe it was me, so I tried to watch some videos and see what I could find out. But what happens is that when I put my pen down on the paper and I make the star and I lift it up, sometimes it leaves almost like a crater in the ink. Do you know what I mean? So
Oh,
like,
like a little divot of sorts, or?
well, yeah, just because like just the nature of using like the ball head on the pen.
Mm.
Sometimes when it comes up, there's no ink on it, and so it just kind of either sucks the ink back up or something. But you don't get you still get like a round star, but then it's not even, right? Is the simplest way to put it. So I was trying to figure out if there's a way to get more even stars. So then I was looking at different pens, and they have these dip pens in there. They're pretty cheap. They're just like an old timey pen, and then you get like an ink well, and you dip your pen into the ink well. And then I was thinking I might try that. And the other thing I might try to do is just buy some of this white ink. That's the expensive part. It's $20, and I'm hemming and hawing over it. And you think of I was reading an article by Alan Dyer this past week in Sky and Tell, and he was talking about getting imaging setups, like starting imaging setups were like that he was aiming at $3,500 American. I was thinking, well, I'm debating whether to spend. Actually, the ink is $18 at the art store. I'm debating spending $18 at the art store, right? So maybe I should just buy it. This isn't a big
Yeah.
investment. I'm not buying a $4,000 imaging rig, right?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, gonna maybe give that a shot during this cold weather, just to experiment with. But yeah, I'm looking at getting a few things, Shane. I've been doing some research into dew strips. Have you ever looked into dew strips much before?
No, no, not really. For the most part, I've never had
Mhm.
an issue with dew in any of my observing. But the circumstances that you're running into are different than mine. So I think I've just been fortunate to not have a need, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why I'm experiencing more dew than I've ever experienced in Saskatchewan. This is like almost Nova Scotia dew, or in this case, really at the present time, it's frost, but in the summer it will be dew, and I think the main one is that when when your telescope is out for a long period of time, it does tend to cool more to ambient temperature, and then that's when you're going to get dew or frost collecting, right?
Yep.
So, um, what's happening is, I go out and roll the observatory off at, an hour or so before dark, and then I've been observing for long periods because we have these nice long dark evenings. So, roll it off at 3:30 or 4 because it's getting dark at 5, and
Mhm.
then sometimes not rolling it back on till midnight or 1 a.m. or something, not super late, but pretty late. Some nights, like 10, but even still, then that roll off has been open sometimes 5 or 6 hours. And that just causes a lot of opportunity for frost to form inside. That's one thing. The other thing is that the observatory does a very good job of blocking the wind. Wind is a dew inhibitor.
Mhm.
And so because of that, I'm aiding the observatory itself is facilitating the collection of dew is kind of what's happening. But
Mm.
I think it's way better to block the wind and fight the dew, because when there's wind, you just can't be out.
Yeah, the wind will end it real soon. Is there an opportunity just to almost have like a cross flow vent within the observatory that you can close while you're observing to prevent the air from moving, but while everything's sort of just sitting waiting for you, it's maybe not quite as advanced in its, frost slash dew collection.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have it set up so that I do have a vent on the front and a vent on the back that I can open like
Hmm.
lower down.
Hmm.
And I've done that, and it helps a little. I think it probably, I don't know if it will, but it might do the trick in the summer.
Okay.
But with, when our humidity has been high and it has been clear, and on one really still night, I just got so much frost. It was like it was ridiculous how much frost there was.
Okay.
Yeah, so I gotta just do this the proper way, I think, with the dew heaters. So I was talking to Kendrick Astor Instruments. They're kind of like the big name in dew prevention, I think, or dew fighting.
Yeah, they seem to be like for as long as I've been in the hobby, they seem to be the de facto standard. If you're needing some sort of dew control, you go with Kendrick, I think.
Yeah, I have bought stuff from them in the past. I don't think it's Kendrick that owns it anymore, because the person who replied, and I wrote them on Saturday. They're not open on Saturday, but the guy replied with like crazy details on what I can get. It's a little bit overwhelming because they are the experts in dew and dew prevention. I think it's like this is what they live for, and it's like a whole different ball of wax than I'm used to. I never really thought that much about this before. I thought back in the day, I thought if I built an observatory in Nova Scotia, I would definitely be going for the dew prevention. But here, I thought, oh, might be able to get away with it. But yeah, that's not happening when I have to fight the dew, unfortunately. So the way it works is you buy these dew bands. They're kind of like little belts. I think it's a combination of neoprene and like Velcro, and they have some resistant wires that run through them, and then they have leads that go back to a temperature controller. You can run four off one controller, and then that has a lead that runs back to a power adapter, either that will go into your battery or that will go into your just like your mains power. So because I have power run to the observatory, I can just plug in, fortunately, but you still need like this power box. That was sort of an unanticipated cost, because I thought I might just be able to get like a little, like a little power brick, and just plug it in for like $30. But no, those power adapters are getting up towards $250, I think.
Oh, wow.
So they're not inexpensive. So, but that's sort of the cost, I think, of doing business when you're getting into this kind of stuff and want to do like long nights at the observatory. So, because I did kind of lose some observing when I was set up. I was going to do some observing the following night, but when I took the dew cap off, I had a lot of frost on the lens itself. Not a lot, but any frost seems like a lot when it's on the lens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, you never want to see that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I had to kind of break it down and take it in, and yeah, I don't like seeing that either. But it is what it is. That can happen. So anyway, yeah. So dew heaters, that's the way to go. And apparently, what you do is you strap them underneath your lens cell. So typically, the refractor goes up, and then it kind of you have like your optical tube or your OTA, and then it kind of bulges out at the lens cell. A lot of telescopes have like bigger lens cells, or at least my refractors have bigger lens cells and dew shields than the tube itself. And you strap it in behind there, and then you run it, and then because the telescope is kind of pointed up, it creates like a little bit of a warm air bubble like in the top of the tube that gradually kind of keeps the lens itself and the end of the telescope just slightly warmer enough that it repels any dew or frost from landing on it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have like a humidity slash temperature logger, like sensor in the observatory that would log data so that you could see kind of how it's performing while you're not there, or even when you're there? But just curious.
I have them. I just haven't put them in.
Hmm,
Is
okay.
sort of the simple way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
there's
I,
just no point yet.
yeah, I'm just curious what the humidity is in that thing most of the time. But
Very
like,
low.
yeah,
I can
okay,
I
well,
can
that's
tell you
good.
it's
Yeah.
I can tell you it's very low. So the way it's designed is to it's designed to slightly warm during the day, just like maybe 2 degrees above ambient,
Okay.
in such a way, and it creates this breeze inside, even when it's deadly still. If you're standing there, you can feel like the air being moved out of it.
Hmm.
And so it kind of pulls air in from the bottom, like in through the cracks in the floor around the pier, and then it vents it out the top. And yeah, it's very, very dry in there. So on, I guess it was last Friday, I think, where I've just filled it full of frost. Like it was, I bet you there was, like, no joke, I bet you there was like a millimeter or more of frost over every single surface in there.
Whoa. Well,
And
that's a lot of humidity. That's
oh yeah, just imagine, like,
yeah.
really, like, and maybe even more than that. I mean, I'm going to say that's like minimum.
Yeah.
Um, and in the morning when I went out at 9:30 or 10, I would say that 90% of the frost was gone.
Okay. Nice.
And so by the time that the afternoon rolled around, it was completely gone. And these are short days. We have like what, 6 hours of sunlight or whatever it is. So it does work.
Hmm.
And even when we've had, whatever we've been doing, like painting or whatever, like it's dried out really, really, really fast, like exceptionally fast. And you can feel it too. Like it's, yeah, when you stand in there and put your hand up, I think even when you and I were in there, I said, yeah, take your glove off and stick your hand up in the top, and you can feel the air kind of moving around. I can't remember if we did that or not, but there's a lot of air circulation in that. But when it's open and exposed to the night air, yeah, it's just going to collect.
Hmm.
That's just the way it is, unfortunately. So need to get one dew strip for the finder. I want to get one for my large eyepieces,
Hmm.
and I want to get one that I can use in both the 4 and the 5-inch refractors. And then, of course, for the new 7-inch TMB F6 Acromat.
Yeah. You can't forget about that one.
No, I know. Yeah. So I don't want to just keep getting due on all this stuff. And yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like you said, you don't want to see the dew and the frost. And they're like, it's fine. Like it's fine to get some, but at the rate that I'm observing, like I think I did like 50, maybe more than 50 sessions since the 1st of September out there, and sometimes twice a night, and sometimes for 3 to 6 hours. That's a lot. I mean, I think over time, like you could really do some damage to a telescope if it's getting that much exposure, right? It's a lot.
Yeah, and I think the right approach is what you're doing, which is, get it all sorted at the
Yeah,
start here. And then once you have it all figured out, you put the gear in there and you're well protected and
yeah,
and also, set up for success so that you can have some nice extended observing sessions out there.
yeah, because that's what you want. Like when you build the observatory, you want to have more observing, not
Hmm.
not the same or just a little bit more, but it would be nice to, even roll it off, and you know uh, sometimes go down and just sleep for a couple hours and then go back up, because I can kind of lock it in place in different ways, whatever. And yeah, I think we'll get it sorted out. There's a few things to go, but we're into that, like I was saying, we're into that fine tuning mode right now, I think, which feels pretty good, because you can use it, you can roll it back, and then there's some fine tuning that's going to take place over the next year, I'm guessing. So
Yeah, yeah. And once you get all of this in place and you actually start using it, I'm sure you will discover some other maybe rough edges or things that you can improve and you just, it almost becomes a continuous improvement program to a
yeah,
certain degree.
and I feel like, and I am an extremely fortunate person, because um, the builder that I have, uh, fortunate to have agreed to work with me, despite my complete lack of really any sort of building knowledge or anything. He's just excellent, and I think he just likes working on interesting projects like this.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's just so nice. Like he built some custom furniture in there, and you know, the you know, it's just been so cool to have that. And he went and picked out like some really nice, because he looked at it and and I kind of said like what I was going for, and then he picked out like this wood. He went to like two different places and then picked out this nice wood. It has like a tiger stripe pattern on it, and then he said, "Are you going to paint it?" I said, "I can't paint it. It's too beautiful," kind of thing. So it's pretty cool to have that. And he's willing to he wants to come up and then see how it's working and then tweak it. He's already made a few tweaks. We had a little bit of snow that was getting in and in around the door, and he came up and built like a little bit of an interior frame in that area. And no more snow has come in since that point. It's really, really cool to have that. Yeah, it's been really nice.
Yeah, that's great.
Every once in a while I'm pausing to cough. So if you notice, why does Chris drop off there for a second? The other thing I need to do is sort out a finder.
Yeah, you were mentioning this.
Yeah, I have I blame you. First of all, I blame you on this. Is that my ultimate goal was to use the 50 millimeter f5 Borg that you put together, and then I kind of modified to meet my needs by following along with the script. But I really like using that as a standalone scope with my 2-inch accessories and running super wide fields, like 10+ degree fields on it. It's just so cool. But in a way, like 10-degree fields are overkill even for a finder scope. Like it's just like it's hard to even get something centered in a 10-degree field. And I know that because I've tried it on my telescopes, and then I'm like, well, I just swap off and put a 1 1/4, and like around a 5-degree field is sort of ideal.
Yep.
So because of the way you had the telescope set up one way, which was great, it got me going. And then I bought some extra parts to do what I wanted to do. And so I have a few extra parts, and I was thinking of buying another lens. So I've been keeping my eye open for a lens. I think I might get a 60 millimeter f5.4 achromatic lens from Borg to make a good finder scope for the 7-inch. That's my plan anyway. I think that would be a 5 or just over a 5-degree true field with a 32 millimeter Plossl. What do you think about that one, Shane?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice setup. The 7-inch obviously goes a lot deeper than any of your other telescopes. And, I think it's good to sometimes match, larger finders to larger aperture telescopes. Certainly the real purpose is to get you in the field of view of where you want to be. But the other part of that too is to maybe help identify, at a kind of a very entry level, maybe. No, it's not quite the right word, but sometimes a finder, you can see the deep sky object that you're searching for within the finder, which is super helpful.
Yep.
And having a 60 mil just gives you a little bit more grasp for that purpose. And then you transition over to the big aperture to really, take in the view. But yeah, I think a 60 mil on that 7-inch would be great. And, one of the reasons I think why you and I both like the Borg, in addition to the modularity, is the lightness of these things. Like they're just, they barely weigh anything relative to comparable apertures from other makers. So, when you have a finder scope, you also want that to not be super heavy to cause other balance issues. So I think going with the Borg is the way to do it. And the nice thing with the 60 mil achromat is it's also not super expensive. And when talking of a finder, you probably don't need an apochromat for that thing. The achromat will be fine. And if the 60 mil achromat is anywhere near the performance of our little 50 mil achromats, man, that's going to be a nice finder. Like the 50 mils are fantastic. I didn't expect an F5 achromat could possibly be that good, but it really is.
Yeah. And kind of one of the reasons for all this is if I have a really nice set of finder rings from Stellar View, but even set the best way I can set them, the rings themselves are too far apart to have the 50 millimeter inside and to have like proper focusing and blah, blah, blah. It's just the little telescope, the little 50 millimeter f5 is too small for that. And so I need at least about another couple inches of focal length. The 50 millimeter has 250, and the 60 has 325, and I think that's going to be better in those rings. And there's a few other little wonky things too, which makes me want to have a slightly longer focal length just for usability and the way that I'm going to set it up. So there's that. That's kind of like the main reason. I was looking at possibly getting one of the new 54 millimeter acromats that are f5.6, and I really really like that, but it's going to run me another $150 or something Canadian once I get it to my door, and it starts to feel expensive, especially when I got to buy a bunch of other gear and whatever. So I was thinking, like, just get the least expensive option, cobble together a finder out of the 60 acro. I think the difference is going to be negligible, and then I'd save a few bucks. See, the method to my madness is, if I was going to buy another set of rings, like a good set of custom finder scope rings are going to run like $100 or more for me, and I can get the acromat for about the same price. So it's kind of like, I might as well just go and get the acromat and then tune it up for just having the 32 millimeter Plossl, or get and then I can kind of maybe get a crosshair eyepiece for it as well, or whatever. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. So that's
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
And then,
go
the
ahead.
other sort of benefit is it leaves the 50 mil sort of for your fun 10-degree fields of view whenever you want it. You don't have to have it kind of permanently on the 7-inch and 1.25 inch mode. So you sort of gain some utility as well.
Well, and I just love that. Like,
Yeah.
I would use the 50 millimeter more if I wasn't swapping it between finder scope duty and just scope duty. It's a scope that, like, I would use every night, and that's my plan, is just to kind of put it in the observatory and then just have it there. Yeah, it's just such a neat little scope. I don't want to compare it. It's so easy to think you compare it to binoculars, but it's not like binoculars. It's in some ways not like a telescope. It's like this weird kind of thing. It's just a wide field sky peering instrument that gives you wider fields than virtually any binocular, but allows you to put filters in, and then you can switch the power. Like, many times when I'm observing with it, I'll swap in, I'll use my 30 millimeter or 32 millimeter Masuyama, and then I'll swap in like the 12.5 millimeter Doctor. And, now you're only going to, like, whatever it is, 25 power or something like that. But, you're going from whatever it is, like 8x to 20 or 25 power. And it's just a really, really neat setup. And you can see a lot of different large wide field structure in the night sky with it. Like Barnard's Loop, absolutely the easiest instrument I've ever seen Barnard's Loop with is that 50 millimeter, and same with like the Heart and Soul Nebula. Just easy peasy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not a giant list of objects where you need an enormous field like that, but for the ones that are out there, it is pretty cool. It's neat to have that tool in the toolbox. And the nice thing too with our mini Borgs is we don't have a house mortgage tied up in them. Like, they're
No.
they're fairly inexpensive. So I don't always feel bad when it sits on the shelf for a little while, only to come out for some of those bigger wide field opportunities.
Yeah, I have probably another 100 or $200 in mind than you, but um, it's going to enable me to get the 60 millimeter lens, which is $100, and I think I can cobble together a whole other telescope out of the parts that are left over from some of my other 50 millimeter configurations.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, that's kind of the method to my madness. I also need to get new ADM plates for the AZEQ6. So um, you have clamps that are on your telescope mount to clamp on to the rails of your telescope, and the ones on the Skywatcher, they're good. They're fine. I think especially for a shorter tube, but for the 7-inch refractor, I think because I am getting it, it is in the range and it will work fine. I've seen people use these and similar scopes on the AZEQ6, but I am getting up into the top range of where the mount is going to perform,
Mhm.
and I want to get like top end clamps to clamp that telescope to it because you just don't want to be a little bit under clamped when you're putting a 35 pound OTA onto your mount that's going to sit there for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So what are you thinking of getting, the ADM ones or?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
ADM ones I
Yeah.
I think are going to be the way to go. So yeah, I think that's the plan anyway. We'll see. I got a few things here to try to work through this winter. So yeah, I think the dew prevention is the first because that's kind of already limited one session, and so that can't happen because you don't want to go through all the bother of having an observatory, like building it. Like I don't want to say that I built it, but I end up doing a fair bit of work in there and on the design and now the commissioning, only to be losing sessions or parts of sessions because things are just frosting up. So I got to fix the dew first, and then it's going to be working away on these other things.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I should put a shout out to Eric. Didn't put this in the notes, but our friend Eric there, he works in construction, to
Mhm.
put it just in a very basic way. I think he's done a lot of different construction roles. So he is extremely knowledgeable. And we've been going back and forth on some different ideas for maybe how to do some of the actual structural improvements that I think we still need to do to the pier in particular. So he's got a couple good ideas about how to put in some, and this was always the plan to put metal angle iron on the pier, and then I was concerned that that might still not be enough. I think it would be enough for the 5 inch because I'm running the 5 inch at 150 power now, and it's okay. Like it is okay. It's
Mhm.
definitely better than half of the observatories I've been into, but I want it pretty rock solid. I think if we put the angle iron the way that Eric has described it to me, I think if we do that, the 5 inch will be okay. But I think for the 7 inch refractor, we're going to need more. So Eric was saying that what I could do is get a sonotube or something of that
Mhm.
nature, and then put that down over top of the pier, and then fill that with sand, and
Mhm.
then just
Mhm.
have sort of the top part of the pier sticking out. So I like that idea because one of the things that I want to be a little bit careful of is I can't disturb the hill. If I disturb the hill that I'm on, it's a shared hill. It's both my hill and the other half of the hill, or more than half of the hill, is the property of somebody else's. And then in the back, I own the back of it too. But um, I don't want to destabilize that hill. That would just be bad for many, many reasons beyond
Mhm.
astronomy.
Mhm.
And I also don't want to have that much of a footprint so that like it can be sort of dismantled without like destroying the hill. Do you know what I mean? Like if
Mhm.
it would be nice just to be able to, if somebody so chose in the future, or whatever, when I'm done with it, just to cut the pier off and then throw a few shovelfuls of earth over top, and then in 5 years you'd never know anything was even there. I kind of like that idea too, but anyway, that's just a couple other things I've been thinking about. So thanks to Eric for his suggestions on that.
Right on.
Are you gonna, before we go, are you gonna buy an eyepiece?
No, probably not.
Ah, I really want you to buy that eyepiece.
Oh,
What
I know you
eyepiece?
do.
What eyepiece was it?
Well, I keep thinking about this Nikon Nav HW 17 millimeter. It's I think it's 102-degree field, 16 millimeters of eye relief, and just gets phenomenal reviews anywhere that I read. Um, Justin Lee, who we've had on the show, and
Mm,
he and I correspond occasionally, just through email. He has this eyepiece, and I think he was at the Oregon Star Party, and they were using this in some large apertures. I want to say like 24 inches ish, or maybe even a bit bigger. And they were comparing it against some Delos, like the 17.3 Delos, and I think some other eyepieces in that focal length. And it sounded like there was multiple observers, seasoned observers, and the next day, three of them ordered that Nikon
Ooh.
nav. A number of them sold their Delos and whatever else they had in that focal range. And I've read just similar reports on cloudy nights and other forums as well. So it's always been intriguing to me, and it comes with a like a little Barlow that you thread into the bottom of the eyepiece that converts it to a 14 millimeter
Yeah.
102-degree field, and
Yeah.
it's also supposed to be exceptional.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a good price on it out of Japan right now. It's on sale. Um, I'm kind of intrigued. Now, the reason why I'm saying no, I'm not going to buy it, two reasons. One, I'm really enjoying bino viewing, and I don't see myself getting away from that anytime soon, or maybe ever.
Mhm.
I'll still occasionally do Cyclops viewing when I want the real wide fields, but when I want those views, I'm probably using like the 31 Nagler or the 41 Panoptic. Like I'm probably going for as wide of a field as I can.
Mhm.
So that's probably the biggest factor. Now,
Yeah.
the other factor is on my like TSA 102, which is my primary telescope. That Nikon 102-degree field will give me the same true field in the TSA as my 24 millimeter Panoptic does today. So it's not like I'm gaining a lot. Sure, it's a higher magnification and maybe a little bit darker background, and I do believe that the Nikon optics are probably better, than the Panoptic in terms of transmission and contrast and all of that stuff. So certainly there would be some gains that way, but I'm not sure it's worth the sizable investment for probably not a lot of use, if I'm being honest with myself. So I always, it seems like every 12 months I get to this point where I'm like, okay, I think this is when I should buy that Nikon. And
Mhm.
then I always come back and kind of ground myself and reach the same conclusion every time that it just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense for me, based on the way I observe. So that's the latest there.
Well, look, I've made this offer for the offer stands. You can buy all the eyepieces you want. If you choose not to use them, you can always just leave them with me, Shane. I'm happy to be the curator of them in your absence, and you can come and use them anytime you want.
Well, I appreciate the offer, Chris. And if there is some eyepieces I'm intrigued by, it's what we'll talk about on the next episode with the new Takahashi TPLs. Those ones in particular intrigue me a lot. But there's also some new ones from why can't I
Masuyama.
say Masuyama today? Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about both of those in the next episode.
Thanks, Shane. Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers you know. And as we discussed earlier, send us your ideas, observations, questions, and any gear that you've recently purchased, acquired, received as a gift, or questions about what you want to buy. You can send all that to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.